Hello everyone, Cedric Derecho here, and for our Past Today assignment number 2, we are going to talk about Our Lady of the Assassins, which is a novel by Fernando Vallejo, and how it talks about the violent state of Colombia. To give a little bit of background about the novel, the story concerns a writer named Fernando who has left his home country of Colombia for over 30 years. He lived in different places, including Italy, and he comes back to his home city of Medellin, which has now been overtaken by the drug empire of Pablo Escobar. It's now considered the murder capital of the world, and soon after, Fernando, who is a homosexual, meets up with Alexis, a 16-year-old sicario who is a contracted killer, and supposedly they fall in love. That can be debated, as will be discussed later. They go on a bit of a killing rampage, killing many people, basically just anybody that Fernando can't stand, somebody that might be contributing to the many problems that Colombia already has. And so they do this for a bit, but then tragedy strikes because an assassin on a motorbike kills Alexis, leaving Fernando devastated. And ironically, actually, supposedly ends up falling in love with Wilmar too. And just like with Alexis, he and Wilmar form a sexual relationship, and he has Wilmar do a bunch of killing for him. Wilmar meets the same fate as Alexis. He's also murdered, although in a different way, and that leaves Fernando hopeless at the end, as he sees no future for himself or the current state of Colombia. And so we can ask the question, what does Fernando want exactly from Alexis or Wilmar? Is it love and compassion or a reprieve from the current state of Colombia? Throughout the novel, the sorry state of Colombia and how drugs and crime have corrupted it are expressed by Fernando in many ways. He uses these kids, Alexis and Wilmar, to kill anyone that displeases him, which could be a reprieve for Colombia because he feels, since he is helping to get rid of the human trash from the comunas, which are the poor neighborhoods, that he might be able to, in a way, reduce Colombia's problems, if that's even possible. But going back to the question of whether Fernando loves Alexis or Wilmar, there are contradicting quotes. For example, he constantly mentions Alexis's green eyes, quoting the novel here. Alexis, my one true love, he had bottomless, clear green eyes, of a green as beautiful as any soul out on the grassy plains. He also goes on to explain Alexis's situations here with this quote. I will tell you what is a sicario, a little boy, sometimes a child, who kills on demand, and the men? Generally the men know. Here the sicarios are children or little boys of 12, 15, 17 years old, like Alexis, my darling. He had the eyes green, deep, pure, of a green with more value than any green of the savannah. But if Alexis had the purity in his eyes, he had the heart damaged, and one day, when I loved him more, when I least expected, they killed him, like they will kill everybody. We would go to the same hole of ashes in the same Campos de Paz. So while Fernando sees the green eyes of Alexis and Wilmar as well too as a sign of something pure, what do all the violent actions of Alexis and Wilmar and the violent desires of Fernando reveal about Colombia? Perhaps the most obvious thing here is that they reveal that Medellin is rampant with crime, and each killing reflects Fernando's displeasure with what has happened to his beloved Colombia. He remembers instances as a child, remembering things as they were. For example, he quotes several of the grammarians of the past, how he says how violence, in essence, ruined the grammarians of Colombia, just like how violence ruins everything. And now Fernando finds the slightest displeasure annoying. He sees everybody around him as dead, but they don't know it yet. He describes the Colombian people as there's no greater scourge on the earth than the Colombian peasant. There's no vermin more harmful, more evil, breeding and begging, killing and being killed, such as this miserable lot. What is important to note here are the main similarities and differences between Alexis and Wilmar. Yes, they are both young sicarios who have been unemployed with the fall of Pablo Escobar's drug empire. And we can begin with Alexis here. It's unclear as to whether Fernando loves him or not, but he may or may not love Fernando as well. He's a hitman who will kill anyone upon orders, as evidenced by the many times he kills people for Fernando. It's interesting to note in the story where he couldn't shoot a dog, though, which shows that he has compassion for animals. There was a dog who was in a ditch who was dying, and Fernando asked Alexis to shoot the dog, and he just couldn't. It is at first thought that Wilmar kills Alexis because he was another hitman, but it was revealed to be a revenge killing because, in fact, Alexis killed Wilmar's brother. And so the question can be asked, why is Fernando attracted to two young hitmen? What is appealing about them? Well, it's important to take note here that when Alexis finally says Fernando's name just before he is killed, Fernando doesn't want Alexis's death to be just another murder in Medellin. By saying Fernando's name, Alexis showed Fernando that he genuinely cared about him. But Fernando actually treats Alexis and Wilmar almost the same. For example, he both calls them his one and only. So in reality, is Alexis so special to him then? Does Fernando ever love Alexis or Wilmar? There is symbolism behind calling Alexis or Wilmar his death angel, because Fernando feels they are doing good by killing all of the undesirables in Medellin. Over the course of the novel, Alexis and Wilmar compile a long list of victims, and each person Alexis and Wilmar kill reveals similar undesirable traits that Fernando wants eliminated. By killing these people, Fernando feels he is helping to reduce the population that has been corrupted by crime and violence, just like the overall state of Colombia. For example, Fernando has no tolerance for taxi drivers and kills one that has no tolerance for homosexuality. And this applies to anyone in that sense, because anybody that calls Fernando or Alexis and Wilmar derogatory terms usually angers Fernando and usually has that person whacked by Alexis or Wilmar. So after he has Alexis kill one of these said taxi drivers, a quote from the novel says here, 35,000 taxis there had been in Medellin, 34,999 remain. In another example, this time with Wilmar, there's a young mother with two children on a bus, and Fernando despises this young mother and her two children, and he has Wilmar shoot them because he feels that the poor do nothing but reproduce, beg, and add to Colombia's seemingly unsolvable problems. He feels that children are born without rights and that they have to survive to earn them. Additionally, Fernando has Alexis and Wilmar kill several police officers because they are corrupt and do nothing to stop the rampant crime in Medellin. Fernando says of them, they're invisible men, the ones who, when you most need them, are nowhere to be seen, and they're more transparent than an empty glass. Fernando feels that any useless person who is a contributor to Colombia's many problems are deserving of the angel of death, whether it be Alexis or Wilmar. And so the question can be asked if Fernando is simply using Alexis and Wilmar to kill some of the undesirable people in order to clean out Medellin. Does Fernando love Alexis or Wilmar, or does he love what they are doing? By referring to them as death angels, he feels that the killing he has them do are only to deserving people. All along, Fernando knows that Alexis and Wilmar are hardened by their work as assassins, and therefore feel no remorse when they kill. Perhaps like the drug lords who hired them, Fernando is also doing a form of assigned killing. By showing his displeasure openly, knowing Alexis or Wilmar will respond by killing such people that make him unhappy. Maybe this is his revenge in Colombia, or in his mind, his way of helping things. Fernando says of the people that he has killed that they will either suffer no more or they will no longer bring harm to Colombia. This can further communicate the message that Colombia has become so corrupted to a point where only the death of these human scum can solve the issue. Fernando might feel like Alexis and Wilmar are performing miracles for him by killing all these people. At the very least, Alexis and Wilmar certainly don't feel like they're being used by Fernando, because Wilmar even says that if there is anything he could not kill, it was Fernando. So they both feel compassion for Fernando, and Fernando does for them, but can this really be considered love? Interestingly enough, the events of this novel can be compared directly to the real-life events going on at the time in Medellin. The rise of Pablo Escobar and his drug empire are a main contributor to Colombia's decline, both in the novel and in real life. He is the reason why crime has skyrocketed, including the murder rates, and why the government is corrupt, and why young people are also corrupted, such as Alexis and Wilmar. They grew up in a world of violence, with some being hired as sicarios, which again are paid assassins, and the sicarios themselves can symbolize corrupted youth. Vallejo alludes to Don Pablo throughout and how he controls things. In the novel, Fernando has no hope of happiness and sees no future for his once beloved Colombia because of Escobar, but also being that the people are doing nothing to help their situations. As stated before, Fernando can't stand these useless people, which is exactly why he has Alexis and Wilmar kill a lot of them. There are over 42,000 murders in Medellin between 1992 and 2002. This is an actual statistic. And murder is reflected in the novel as commonplace. It's explicit throughout the novel. Fernando says, everyone is a dead man, but just does not know it yet. All of these problems that are happening occur in the aftermath of Escobar's death, and Escobar was the one that brought this violence upon Medellin in the first place. To sum things up, in conclusion, Vallejo uses the character of Fernando, who is actually loosely based on himself, as a way to give awareness to the present state of Colombia and how bad it has gotten. Everything in the story symbolizes or alludes to real-life events, such as Pablo Escobar's reign or the rampant violence in Medellin. The intentions, desires, and actions of Fernando are told through the killings he has Wilmar and Alexis do. The killing shows that Colombians are helpless to the situation around them, brought on in part due to Escobar and the rise of the drug trade, and how it controls Colombia. Fernando exploits Alexis and Wilmar to do the killing that he wants to do himself and is resigned to the fact that there is no future for Colombia. This bleak outlook may mirror Vallejo's actual opinion on the state of Colombia during this time. The drugs and crimes that ruin Colombia and its effects are shown through what happens in the story. It's bad enough to where everyone is a dead man but does not know it yet. Fernando only sees beauty in death, which is perhaps why he admires Alexis and Wilmar so much. While Vallejo leads the reader into believing Alexis is his one true love, he feels very similar emotions towards Wilmar, and that is because they are both willing to kill and help get rid of these Colombian scum. The novel is a representation of what the drug empire did to the country and how it negatively affected Colombians. For example, all of the police corruption, poverty, and crime, and once again, shown through the useless and undesirable people that Fernando has killed. Vallejo may voice his opinion through Fernando that a total population change could be Colombia's only hope at getting out of this wretched condition.